Okay, guys. Well, we are going to get started. I am so glad that you are here. Hi, wonderful. If for whatever reason you guys cannot hear me or something goes awry, just feel free to pop in the chat, let me know, or you can also come off mute if you would like. Um, that being said, we'll jump right in. So I am so glad you made it. You probably saw us kind of putting the information on Facebook. My assistant, Mars, she's here. She's great. And what I found from hosting myself or for others, or in my own experiences, that people had a lot of these questions, and a lot more people were very interested in getting involved, or even seeing if they wanted to get involved in hosting on Airbnb or other platforms. So first, we'll start off with kind of who I am, right? um, and um, and who I am kind of all the things. So I am both guest. I kind of started out like a lot of us have as an Airbnb guest, as well as then I became host, as well as then after being host for a little while, Airbnb invited me to become part of their Ask the Superhost program. So I've been doing that for a little while, and as well as property management and also consulting, which is kind of a bit of what this is. And it was through doing the ambassador of Ask the Superhost ambassador program that I found that a lot of people had a lot of the same questions. And I just love, Airbnb is kind of where I started, but I love the platform, and I love what's possible. It makes so much possible for anyone to really be able to increase their income and their reach, and what they're wanting to do and reach their goals. And so it's something that I think everyone should know about and should figure out if they want to do it, because they make it so easy for many people to be able to essentially get into real estate. That's really what it is. And so I thought it would be really helpful to kind of start, doing info sessions for people who are curious about it, because it's just growing and growing. Airbnb is putting a lot of marketing dollars into encouraging people to do hosting. Before we're done here, I'm going to share you guys my referral link if you want to, start the process and start putting the list together if that's where you're at. So that'll come later. But I wanted to kind of let you guys know a little bit about me. And then I'm actually kind of curious about you. And so since we are a small group, feel free to come off mute if you want. If not, that's okay as well. But I'm wondering, what is your interest in hosting or Airbnb, and how did you hear about it? And we can start with, I don't know if I'm saying this right, Yosefi? Did you like to come off mute and tell me? And if not, that's okay. You can put it in the chat. And no worries. If not, Natisha, we'll come to you if you feel up to it. If not, that's okay. You can put it in the chat as well. Love to hear from you.
Hi.
Hi.
So yeah, so this is very new to me. I have not gotten started with it, but it's definitely something that I keep seeing and I keep wanting to know more about, and I'm very interested in getting started with this. I just needed a lot of information because I haven't been around anyone who's doing this, so I've been just waiting on someone to give me more information before I really go and dip myself in, because I don't want to get in and then do something crazy and regret it. But yeah, it just seemed like something to do. And I just want to change right now from what I'm doing now, my work environment now.
Well, I completely understand that, and I have heard that before. And the cool thing is a lot of people have used this type of platform to, put them in that direction to either support what they're really wanting to do, or this is what they really want to do. So I'm excited to know you. Just definitely stay connected so I can answer any questions you have, and so that when you are ready, you can jump right in. So thanks so much
Okay.
for sharing. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. And thank you for doing this.
Oh, of course, of course. Well, and if no one else wants to share, that's okay. We'll kind of jump into the next part, and we'll get right into it. So we're going to keep this short and sweet because it's a lot of information here, and kind of the idea of the info session is to give you a bit of an overview a very high level overview so you can kind of figure out what direction that you're wanting to go. And excuse me, I'm kind of looking at my notes here to make sure I don't miss anything. Um, but it's essentially to help you have a starting point, very similar to what Natisha was saying. When you're just like, I've heard about it, I'm curious about it, but that's about it. I wanted to develop something that kind of answers very high level basics of getting started in it and what it's like, a little bit of a insider's view of what's going on there. And then from there, you can kind of go deeper depending on what choices you want to make or what path you want to take. The really cool thing about this whole industry, if you will, is super flexible. There's so many, I call it kind of like choose your journey, choose your adventure. Depending on what your situation is, you can cultivate your own experience, your own path to really what works for you. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we continue on. But there's so much flexibility in it, and I love telling people, and most people are nervous. So if you feel nervous or not confident, don't worry. Like I'm going to say probably like 90% of everybody, probably more than that, start off feeling that way. And there are ways to mitigate that, ways to kind of support that depending on where you're at and, what you might be nervous about. And so if you find, as we, finish this up at the end, I'll kind of go over, ways you can go deeper depending on, what path you want to take. And just so you know, we'll be doing these info sessions, and like I say, they will always be complimentary, and they're going to be on Thursdays and Saturdays. And so if you want to come back and, hear it again, it will be, obviously since I'm doing it live, a little bit different each time, and we'll always kind of do a bit of questions at the end as well, until you're ready to really, move into, another essentially area or box, or even within our community of different things and resources we have to help you along your way. So how to start. So there's so many different ways to get started. I'll start with how I got started. I think the first place is really to be a guest, right? I'd heard about Airbnb, and it was kind of weird to me staying in someone's house. And at one particular time, we decided to try that because, we're a larger family, and a hotel stay is not as comfortable. And so maybe about 4 years ago or 5 years ago, 4 years ago, we stayed at our first Airbnb, and we loved it. And we love to travel, and so that was kind of the beginning experience of Airbnb for us. And we're such people, so it was really neat getting to know our hosts. We left them a little gift and a note, thank you note. They're very communicative, and it was something we really enjoyed. And then about a year, maybe a little bit less than a year later, I found myself by myself at an Airbnb where I really just walked into the place, and I'm very instinct-driven. Very faith-based, and so I just had a feeling I needed to look into it, and turns out that place had just gone up for sale. Not even for sale. They just decided to sell it. It wasn't even listed. They hadn't even spoken to anyone yet. They decided within, I think the day before that they wanted to do that, and so through the course of a lot of prayer and research, actually probably not even that much research, we ended up buying it, and it was already being used as an Airbnb, and I was like, I want to get this just as it's going now, and take it on. And so we were able to do that, and that's kind of how I got started. I kind of got to just hit the ground running by buying a property that was already being run as an Airbnb. And I was, in my situation, the people that were running as an Airbnb were already property management companies, so they had other ones. And so I was able to really take some of that knowledge, some of the things they had in place, and kind of retrofit it for myself, and it really helped to give me a really great start in starting my own Airbnb. And that story gets even more in depth that I won't go into now, but that is one of the ways to get started. And as I've become a Superhost ambassador, I hear so many different people who are in different ways, whether they're looking for a place, they're in the middle of buying a place, they have a place, they're getting another place, and they want to Airbnb the place they're leaving. They want to rent a place to Airbnb. They want to start off as a co-host, and then figure out where to go from there. The cool thing is, and this is what I was saying, anybody can start an Airbnb or be part of it, and that's kind of how, because there's so many ways of entry. You don't have to own anything, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well, in order to be able to get started. So that's kind of the basics. It definitely can go in deeper in that. I have experience as far as in all those areas, and so when or if you choose to move forward and we go to the next steps and some of our resources, then there we can really do a deep dive into whatever your situation is and how you can personally get started. But right now, this is kind of a high-level overview of ways that you can get started. And I'll say it again, you can already Airbnb out the place you already have. There are people who will Airbnb when they go on vacation or if they travel for their jobs, and they set their place up in order to be able to take in guests when they're out of town. There are some people who will Airbnb out a room in their place. If they really want to get started, that was, I think, a more popular version, probably on the European side of things, and a little bit here, but a little bit less so, because the Airbnb is kind of more. I mean, you can do any of those things, but I think they're really more promoting people listing, whole places, because that's what people are more looking for. You can move into a new place, decide to keep your place you're moving out of, and Airbnb that. You can partner. That's something I've seen. People will partner in on a place and Airbnb that. If you want to lease, like rent out a house with the permission of the owner, I've seen quite a bit of that for people who aren't really wanting to buy the real estate yet, but they want to profit on running an Airbnb. They've been able to do that as well. So those are some different ways that you can get started. And there's others. We can talk about others. But the point is open up that possibility. I'm all about neuroplasticity and neuroscience, and being open to things to kind of promote the learning and the flexibility. So one thing to come out of this is you can actually start an Airbnb if you want to. So just keep that in mind. And we will go to the next topic. And we kind of talked about that. You certainly can. You can lease, you can co-host, you can partner. There's so many different ways that you can do it. It is totally possible, and that's another thing. Like, believe it, it's true. I've seen it, and it's pretty amazing, and it's quite profitable from that perspective as well. So this is really cool. So let's say, obviously if you buy a place, that could be, associated in cost of getting started. But like I said, you don't have to buy a place. So oftentimes, if you're looking at how much it costs to get started, and let's say you don't necessarily consider, let's say if you lease a place, then that's going to be associated in your startup costs. But let's just say you host your own place, a place that you're already paying a mortgage on or already paying a lease on, and you have permission from whoever you need it from, whether that's your landlord or you get permits or whatever it is you need to get started. Well, there's actually very low entry to take what you already have and get started. Airbnb doesn't charge you anything up front to get started. They only will make money on the back end, and it's actually only 3%. You can think of it as kind of like a credit card fee after you've actually hosted your guests. So they take your 3% out, and they send you the rest of it, which is usually the room rate, your cleaning fee, minus or any pet fees or any other fees, minus their 3%. Other platforms like VRBO has a dual option. You can choose to pay a bit up front and pay less each time, or I think it ends up being 5 or it's quite a bit, a percent, if you don't want to pay the upfront larger cost, which I think last I checked was like $400 or so, which is pretty easy to, I should say you will spend more than $400 if you choose to do the other way around, if your place tends to book quickly. And what I've seen is most places do. And then the other cost that would be associated is essentially just getting your place ready to go. But the cool thing is you don't have to do everything up front. Really, like, what does your place need to be comfortable for a guest to come stay and to be happy? And that really could be just amenities. And also that's shampoos, conditioners, toilet papers, things that you would find at a hotel is what I'd say, where they're going to feel comfortable, they're going to feel loved on. And not everybody does that. So let me also preface this by saying that this is kind of the style that I've done Airbnb. A lot of people do things different ways, and I've been doing it for 3 years or more. And these things have worked very well for me. I have passed it along to other clients, and it's worked well for them. I manage properties, and it works well for them. So I got to Superhost. If you're not familiar with Superhost is you set up, you meet some standards that Airbnb sets, and then they make you Superhost, and they give you all kinds of perks with that. And I got Superhost as soon as I was able to get it, pretty quickly. And I've helped others do the same. So just to preface it with all of that, this is kind of the style that I've used that's really worked for me. So as far as much it costs to get started, it's not like you would think it is. Airbnb doesn't charge anything up front, so some people will start with Airbnb, get comfortable, and then open up other platforms and get the calendars to talk to each other. That's something we would go into in a more in-depth kind of like Airbnb, et cetera, university that, we also will have for those who really want to get in there and learn all of that stuff, because it is definitely a lot. I learned kind of over time, but I've, putting it together so people can kind of bring in that information and learn it a bit quicker. If that's what they're wanting to do. But yes, essentially the cost, it doesn't have to be high. You can, do it piecemeal. You don't have to get like the most expensive thing ever, but you can still get something nice. Real sale shops, thrift stores, essentially just getting your place to where it's comfortable with your beds and the things that are needed. You don't have to super interior decorate. Just make it comfortable. Some of the best places I've been to are very simple, but have all the comforts there. So that is that. Now, I get this question all the time. When we were putting the slide together, my partner was asking, "Are you sure you want to ask it that way?" I'm like, "This is exactly what I get asked. They ask it just like that. Like, if you're okay with telling me, can you tell me about how much you make doing this?" And that's a great question to ask, because you're like, if you're going to go into it, is it going to be even worth your time to do it? And I'm going to say, at this point in time, it is. The factors that really will play into that will be, for example, if you are, Airbnb being a place that you own or lease, then you're going to want to look at what your mortgage is and what your lease is. And then, we can look at different analytics, which I have, and some basic things that I've learned to see exactly about how much you would make. And I'm going to say right now where you're at, if you're not paying an exorbitant amount in your lease or your mortgage, I've typically seen people make at least double what they are paying on their place. That can tend to be more or less depending on where it is and what season it is, but on average, minimally, like playing it safe, you can usually expect about that. Not necessarily every month, but I have seen on most months people are making breaking even in the slower months, but that can vary. What I can say is over 12 months, it's profitable. So the only thing that may shift or change is if, I know with interest rates going up and things like that, depending on where you go, that might shift a bit, but I know up to now, it's been really well, and it's just growing. More and more people are using these services, traveling, and paying more. I've seen a huge increase in nightly rental rates for places just in the last couple of years. And like I said, we are kind of professional guests and hosts kind of at the same time because we do a lot of traveling. So that's pretty exciting. So when you decide that you want to run, and I'm going to call it as a short-term rental, STR, that's what that means, or an Airbnb, because Airbnb is not the only way. It's just what's become kind of the most popular, kind of like we say Google it, which essentially just means researching online. Airbnb is becoming a term like that. So for your short-term rental, if you're ready to do it and jump in, some of the things that you're going to be doing first is figuring out what platform you want to use. Airbnb is a very popular one. I think it's a really great one to start with. They make it very easy to get started, very, very easy. They have a whole setup wizard, as they call it, where they run you through a very linear process just to get your listing published, and then they open up all of the various options for you to be able to essentially toggle your listing to be according to what your preferences are. My recommendation is it would be a really good idea for you to have somebody to do that with you. It's even if you're doing it DIY, and actually Airbnb has that program I was telling you about. That's something that I do kind of all through the day, is help new hosts. And so when you're ready, at the end of this, I'll put my link in the chat so you have it. If you think you're going to do it, get on that link, and it'll connect you with me. And this is all complimentary because Airbnb takes care of this. So bare minimum, if you're going to do it, I would highly recommend going through Airbnb, putting in that referral link, and I kind of back you up and answer questions there through the portal as you get your listing up and going. Because I have seen there's a lot of pitfalls you'll fall into, I guarantee you, if you don't do that. And so that is kind of my suggestion. And even if you're not ready with the listing yet, you can still put that in there. Say, hey, can you share? I was on your info session, but I don't have my listing yet. And you can still ask questions there, and I can answer them and help you however I can to get you going. And so that's how I would get started in the beginning for wherever you're going to go with that. And then the other options to run your listing would be hiring a property manager from the front, from the beginning. So say you already have your property and you're like, okay, I really love the idea of it, but I don't really have the time to run it and all the logistics that go with it. And I'd rather go a traditional model of hiring a property manager to take care of it, and I'm just going to collect the check, collect the money. And that's a very passive income revenue option. And I don't know if you've heard that, but that's really big right now. Everybody's trying to come up with passive revenue streams so that they can retire. And that's a great way to do that. And you find a really good one. And that there's a whole, series I have, a whole lesson I have on hiring the right property manager, as well as should you hire a property manager. The other option is some sort of hybrid model where you may have somebody that co-hosts with you, or you sit as co-host and you kind of watch and kind of, see if it's something that you want to take on later or not. I've been doing that with a couple of my clients. I have to say, it's got its pros and cons for sure. And that's something I won't go into now. But from my perspective, depending on your goal, if you feel like you've always wanted to run a B&B, then probably doing it yourself eventually would be good. If and you're going to be on call all the time, which is a good thing if you love it. And if you set everything up right, things usually run pretty well. And you get the right help. Like I said, I had a property management company that I was kind of, had to ask questions to and learn from, and I have a better property manager experience in my background, as well as I do event coordinating and planning, and there's a lot of correlations there as well. So that's kind of why it's worked well for me. It's already kind of in what I do. But if it's not already in alignment, it may be a difficult shift for you to make, which doesn't say you can't make it. You could totally make it, but it may be a bit difficult, which is why it's probably good to have somebody to come alongside you so that you are successful, because that's what's important. You're coming into it because you want to make money. You want to make sure that you're able to reach those goals or meet those plans that you have. So the hybrid model is there. So that's kind of a very short and sweet example and explanation of those different options. Now, a lot of people ask this as well, is, how do you automate your Airbnb and what do you do? And since we travel, we do manage it remotely to a certain extent. But the big part of our success, though, is because we have a lot of boots on the ground. Like I said, we've been doing it for years. And, you have to have the right people there, but also you're able to get there if you need to really be able to manage remotely. Automation's great. I have to say, for me personally, I'm a bit old school. And I like to do it kind of myself and then work into automation. And a lot of the automation is new. So, a lot of property management companies, because before Airbnb or before things like that existed, when people had extra homes that they wanted to rent out, they went with these property management companies, vacation rental companies, travel agents, things like that, that would do a lot of work and legwork in order to market their properties. When Airbnb showed up as a platform, it allowed anybody to be able to market their property with ease because they do it for you. So anybody just goes on Airbnb, looks for a place to stay in your area, your place is going to pop up. And all you need to do is just put it up there, make sure your place is ready, make sure you've got your cleaning people in place and a process in place, and and able to receive them and host them and allow them to check out well. Then you're going to make money. It's really not a whole lot that you need to do to bring people in, which makes it very, very amazing and very easy. When I first started, I was like, wow, this is just, they just come in, and this is before it got as popular as it is now. I've seen every person that I have helped to host, whenever Airbnb has sent them as a part of the Superhost Ambassador Program, I want to say most of them, and I want to say most, I want to say 80 to 90% of them get their first booking within 24 to 48 hours. I think when I started back in 2019, I remember being very nervous, like, is anyone going to do this? What's going to happen? And I got my first listing within the first week, maybe about 3 or 4 days in. But now, it's just going. People are booking so fast. And in the middle of nowhere even, you're finding that. So definitely that can be encouraging. And it is possible. And this is something we do also go into depth on for those who, want to either consult or jump into one of our classes on. So this is a big one as well. Sometimes people kind of forget this part, and then it ends up kind of affecting them on the other end a bit sooner. And this is whenever it becomes stressful to run an Airbnb, because if you don't have these things in place, then you're going to run it more than likely run into some issues that you might not. And like I said, what helped me is, well, I had a bit of background in property management, and I also was working with a property management company when we bought our place. And so I used a lot of their practices, a lot of their rules, regulations, and things like that as I adapted my own thing. And it really, I mean, we coasted very well. We still do. We've been very blessed in how that's worked out. And a lot of that comes with setting all of that up front. And I have a whole thing and lists and checklists and all that, and even some samples and templates to help with that kind of thing, and what to do. So when you get ready to set up your listing, we'll go through all of those things to make sure that you're inviting the guests that are going to really honor your place and know exactly what's expected of them and feel comfortable and all of that good stuff. So that kind of definitely rolls into here. So when you are getting ready to get started, one of the big things that ends up getting people in trouble is, one, having the cleaning situation. That ends up being very difficult for even the most seasoned property management companies, people. This is the biggest thing, finding the right vendors, especially cleaners, that you are getting together with. And I give some really great tips. One of the things I do say is, you need to partner with your vendors, especially your cleaner, and really pay them well and make sure they know how appreciated they are. And that should go for any of your vendors, but definitely wanting to make sure that you have that together. Having a process in place is really important as well, because it's coordinating. So I did event and wedding planning, and so for those of you who know, that's like you are literally coordinating so many logistics. Who goes where, when, what shows up, who this, you do all of that. And Airbnb can be a lot like that, your short-term rental, your vacation rental, because you're coordinating a lot of moving parts, and making sure that everybody knows when they're supposed to show up and what they're supposed to do is really, really important. Creating that trust, creating all of that is important to make sure that when each guest comes in, your place is ready to go, it's pristine, the things that you're wanting to be there are there, and they're having the say that they're expecting, and the communication is there. So it's really easy for that to kind of get out of whack if you're not careful. The other thing, too, is to make sure that you've kind of crossed your T's, dotted your I's. It's not complex. It's just as this is growing, more and more things are coming into play. So more and more permitting is being required in certain cities. Not all of them, but it's good to check these things out. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But that is a part of your setup process. You're going to want to make sure you have those things in place. Airbnb does, last I checked, they still do take care of taxes, with the exception of whatever you would report on your income. Another question that I have had a lot is, you don't have to have an LLC or a business in order to do this. You can, and actually it used to be it wasn't super encouraged because Airbnb didn't want people going outside of the platform. But they have a whole setup now that will allow businesses to be on there. Personally, I still do it as me. I've seen very seasoned, years in business property managers keep it as themselves as well, not put their business in. And then they have their own booking site, which is that their repeat guests, can come to. And like I said, that's something we can, go into deeper detail later if that's something that you're interested in. So pros and cons, we talked a little bit about that already. I feel like the pros will outweigh the cons if all your ducks are in a row, if all your foundation is laid correctly. So I'd say the biggest con is just, one, not having the support of the information or the understanding of the market, of the place, of people, of what's expected. I think when you come in and you don't know that, that can end up making a lot more cons, right, than there may need to be. There's so many pros, though. I mean, one of the big ones, one of the things I loved was just how easy it felt. But remember, it's because I had the foundation in place. And I only know that now because of the time that has passed and who I've helped and things I've seen and heard over time. And so a lot of the pros is the amount of money you make is great. It also opens you up to be able to get more properties. I see people do that all the time. That the money they're making, they get comfortable. They say, well, let's get another property. I just had a conversation yesterday with someone that's what he does. Like, he doesn't own many of them. He just makes a presentation to the owner, and the owner agrees to be part of that and agrees to lease it to him. And so that's another story. We offer all kinds of stuff within our community, but one of the things is, and I've helped people through the hosting program platform as well with Airbnb, who are wanting to put together presentations to convince a landlord or even an apartment complex to allow them to lease out the space to be used as a short-term rental or nightly rental. Those are all things that they're called. And so that's something that can definitely be very helpful for those of you who are interested in it and wanting to kind of dip that toe in as well. So a lot more pros, I feel like, than cons, especially when you lay your groundwork. Some of the cons that can happen, you are going to have the guest that can cause damage, or the guest that's unhappy, or the guest that's kind of difficult to please. In my personal experience, that I've been very blessed. And for me, like I said, everybody's style is different. I actually pray over all my places, even the places I manage. I'm very upfront with my clients about how I handle things, and I make sure before we start working together that they're okay with my style. I call it a very open-handed approach. I don't go after guests for every little thing, and oftentimes it has balanced out beautifully. For me, it's been 3 years, and I've had very minimal things, like minimal things happen, and then when they did, it was like everything was in place to be able to solve it pretty quickly. So we've been very blessed in that, and I do believe it's because it's been an open-handed way of doing things. And I go through a whole section and lesson on this for those who want to kind of learn some of those tools of success that have worked really well for me. And it's made things really good for my vendors. My vendors love working with me because of the style that I have, and the guests really enjoy their stay. And it's good to find that balance. So we've talked a little bit about this before, and so as it's getting more and more popular, as people in the cities are starting to say, you know, there's money that we can be making here from this, you know, what's going on here, this explosion of all of the Airbnbs that are happening. They're hearing more and more about it, and so some cities who are seeing it pop up are starting to require permitting. Some of them are making more zoning regulations where you cannot even Airbnb in an area. Some HOAs are even starting to shut it down as well. But then people are coming back and, you know, appealing that. And so there's a lot of movement happening in that area right now because of how much it has just exploded in the last couple of years. The people doing this, and I mean everyone all over the world, you know, getting more and more into doing these kinds of things. And so my recommendation is whatever city that you're in, to see, you know, what the zoning is when it comes to short-term rentals, nightly rentals, hotel occupancy, that kind of thing. And I think you just kind of use those terms and see, and then if you're having a hard time finding it, it might be good to kind of find a local group and asking them, or people who are already doing it, the property management company even, and asking them, you know, because I know there's one city that we do some property management in, and half the city you can do it, and the other half the city you cannot do it. And I get why. They want to make sure that, you know, everybody's not doing Airbnb and there's no place for people to live who live there as regular residents. So it's definitely good to check that. As far as your taxes go, last I checked, Airbnb does take care of all the taxes and sends them in as far as your local, state, and sales and occupancy taxes. But VRBO only does half. So you want to always make sure that you have that set up. Now, if you're having to submit sales taxes, then you can just kind of Google it. So we'll do a whole session on this as well for people who want to dive in deeper into this information when they get there. And so I'll say, if after this info session you're wanting to go further, then I definitely highly recommend jumping into either, you know, one of our courses or you know, Airbnb, et cetera, university, or doing some one-on-one or something like that. There's something for everyone. But that's kind of just touching on that. That is definitely important to look at. And you're going to want to look at this probably before you kind of go live, although you can do it simultaneously as well. So we've gone through that. So it was kind of a high level. We're going to take too much time up with that. So what's next? Good question. So it's kind of like I was saying, if you are still kind of on the fence, I'd say come to another info session or keep asking questions, keep researching. But if you're wanting to go further in, we have different kinds of things that you can do. We'll kind of go through this quickly. I'm going to actually ask Mars if she is still on here, which is what she is, to put my email in here as well as my referral link, so you have it, so that we can just keep the conversation going. We are kind of fully setting up our community right now, so if you want to invite into the Facebook group so that we can kind of keep conversations going, let me know. Definitely when you send me an email, we can kind of have you in the community as well. But this is kind of what I offer and what I do. And so I call this the fully passive income path, which is a lot of words, but I have certain clients who are like, we work full time, we have a place that we want to turn into an Airbnb. A lot of times either it was a long-term rental or they just acquired it, and they love the idea of it, but they just don't want to spend the time doing all of that. And so we tend to then manage that property for them full time, and that's pretty much everything from traditional property management, making sure maintenance, all that stuff is taken care of, to actually, managing the guests and the platforms and all that other stuff, and then making sure they have everything they need and sending them the money. So pretty much it's passive. It's pretty much mailbox money. I would just call it that at this level. And then now that, I have a lot more people, because of Airbnb, a lot of people can do it by themselves. And so you have those who want to at least try to do it by themselves, or they want to turn it into a business, they want to scale it, and so they kind of want to do it. And so I was saying, if you use my referral link, that's a complete free option to you that allows you to essentially go from getting started to hosting your first guest. And they have a whole kind of neat platform that allows me to be able to help you, to see your listing, all of that good stuff, and get you to the place where you have completed your first stay, and then you can just go off on your own. So most people still need support after that, but that is an option that gets you started pretty quickly, doesn't cost you anything as far as the help. The Airbnb is in place, which I think is brilliant, and they are marketing it. And so yes, feel free to use my referral link if that's something that you want to do. I'd use it anyway as a way to get started, even if you don't have your listing, just so when you have it, you can be ready. And then the next one is kind of that, but with support. And so I've had quite a few people who I've actually met where Airbnb sends me them to help them get started. They get started, but they still have questions afterwards. And so, and then more questions afterwards. And so those are people that I would kind of recommend. They may want to get into kind of a monthly support option with that, depending on how often or how much they want help. I know when I bought mine, I was, looking for help with them all the time, and actually we were paying them to help us to kind of get started, which ended up being really, really, really helpful. They let us use their photos and all that good stuff. And so one of the things we actually do offer, as well as professional photography and all that good stuff to go with that. But that shouldn't stop you from getting started. Oftentimes I'll tell people, if you're not able to get the photos done, just use your phone, because there's a great camera equipment on there, and I give you a few pointers. I think Airbnb even has some really good things to show you how to take good photos, so that you can at least get your listing up, because that's probably not going to stop you from getting a booking. I haven't seen it happen so far. Usually people are getting booked pretty quick. And then this is something that I don't recommend this one personally, but some people want to do it this way, where they kind of want to co-host, want me to co-host. And so I do this, but essentially I'm running it almost similar to the full property management, but on the side I'm also training as well, so that they can learn how to do it. Now, if you know for sure you're going to want to do it yourself later, then this could really work, because it's going to help you get to Superhost quicker. It's going to help you be able to feel more confident and already start making money, even though you're not really sure what you're doing yet. I have tested this model out. It does work, but I feel like if a lot of people who do this usually end up not wanting to do it full time. And so my recommendation might be to have kind of a consultation, to kind of have us look at, what are the reasons why you want to host, and or why you want to do it full time. And then you can determine, like, yes, okay, this is something that I could see myself doing as a career. Or no, I actually have something else I want to do, but I want to pay for that, or I want to buy a bunch of property up. then this may not be the best option. Your best option may be to just have a more traditional property management setup that allows you to build up the income you need, or even the equity you need because you've bought a good property to be able to continue to buy more property. And that's a whole other thing we can talk about as well that I have experience with. And then the other stuff we have, and these are just little bits and pieces that anybody can use anytime. We've got a lot of checklists and forms that you can use. I've talked a bit about the AirBnB at our university. We're growing and building that that goes through pretty much everything that we just talked about, but in more depth, very specifically, detailed. And so we're getting a calendar for that together so that people who want to have more information in certain areas can just pop in, and then we're building kind of a bigger curriculum to where people can, go in and actually learn kind of more progressively from beginning to end, rather than kind of learning the information piecemeal. So everybody learns differently. And so feel free, when you email me, if you email me, you want to know that information, definitely let me know. And this is being recorded, so feel free to ask me for the link. I can send this to you and send it to whomever. If you are wanting to hear it again or want to share it with somebody. And of course, there is the one-on-one as needed. And I have found that sometimes that is helpful. Like I've had someone say, there's someone who wants to book my place for a month, and should I do it? And there's a whole lot of considerations when it comes to that. So I think always ask if you're not sure, because the question is not usually that simple, and it's good to have all the information so you know how to make the decision and how you want to do things. And I think we did that one. And this is that one. So that is the end. Does anybody have any questions or anything they'd like to know before we close it out?
That was all great. Can you send me the link to my email?
Yes, the link to the recording, or
Yes.
to, okay, I sure can. Yes, and I have your email. I emailed you earlier today.
Yes.
So yes, I would be glad to send that to you. And feel free to, yes, message me, text me if you have any questions, or say message me if you have any questions as you watch it again, because it's a lot of information, and it's good to kind of let it sink in to see kind of, what your next steps might be, because only you really know that.
Yes, I definitely will be emailing you. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for coming. And did the other person have any questions? And it's okay if not. And I think, let me check the chat to make sure that hopefully yes, my links are there for you guys. So definitely take those down. But if there are no more questions, then I'm going to close this out. And we'll be doing this again. Hopefully nothing goes wrong. We'll be here on Saturday at noon if we've got enough people registered that want to come. So feel free to pop back in anytime, or ask us questions, or if you want to jump in the community or anything like that, just let us know. That's what we're here for. Oh yes, I see you're off mute. How can I help?
We own a condo that we've been doing Airbnb with for over a year now. So it was just interesting to hear what you had to say. Thank you.
Yes, well, thanks so much for coming. I love that. Well, definitely, if you have any questions, let me know. If not, if you want to communicate more or anything, yeah, stay in touch for sure. I'm so glad you came.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Have a great evening.
You too.
Thank you.
You too. Okay, well, I will then now close the meeting, and I will be in touch with you guys if you need me. Okay.